Alright, I figured I'd make a video on this subject. It's been a while since I've had a gas engine car. I've always, last, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've always had diesel. Don't have this problem on diesel cars. But I do have some gas engine classic cars. So I'm going to go ahead and make a video on this subject of spark plugs. Some do's and don'ts. Now, this is my advice to myself. It's worked perfect for me for many years, and there's a couple things that I'm going to say that you guys might say, wow, that book says so and so, but my experience tells me different. This is a radium plug. Okay, these are the newest, or iridium plug, one of the best ones out there, depending on what you're putting it in. So first rule of thumb is whatever the car is, whatever came in it when it was brand new, that is what I put in it. So if it came with Denso plugs, like a Toyota, I put Denso plugs back in. Same thing with German cars. If it came with Bosch, like an old Volkswagen, I always use Bosch plugs. Another intermediate plug that you can probably get away with on either one, Volkswagen or some of the others, is NGK. So most of my motorcycle stuff, I use NGK because that's usually what they came with. Some of them came with Denso, and I put NGKs in. Usually that's not a problem, Japanese to Japanese. But also, funny thing is, the Japanese and German are also pretty good quality as well. Couple things I don't do. I don't use Champion plugs. I mean, that's like not going to be one of my go-tos. I've had over the years, maybe it's changed recently, I've had times where this white part blew out of the plug. I've had the machining on the tips be terrible. I've had the same thing also with Autolite. So as a piece of advice, I would just stick with original equipment if you can. Most of the time you're going to be okay. So if it had, what is that called again? I can't remember the name. Iridium plugs in it. Because they had iridium, they had platinum, they had other things. And I put iridiums back in if it came that way from the factory. If it had regular plugs in it, okay, I'm not going to put platinums in there or iridiums in there because I've had that cause a misfire. I've taken a platinum plug. I worked as a mechanic in a shop. We used to get cars like a Honda would come in with Bosch platinums in it, and it would fail smog. All we do is change the spark plugs back to OEM, whatever came in it, NGK usually, or Denso, and it passed. You'd see the hydrocarbons going through the roof because there's a misfire. So look, you can do whatever you want to, but this is the way I've done it for years. Now another thing I look at is, you see the gap there? I almost will never re-gap a spark plug. And you might say, well, it's not the correct gap when I get it. You see this thing where it goes up right here? If that thing is misshaped at all, if it's like a little bit bent down, it's not going to fire correctly. You're going to have a worse fire with a spark plug. You need to get the correct spark plug that's already gapped to the correct gap. So a lot of times your spark plugs are supposed to be gapped to a gap that they were recommended to be used at. So if you have to re-gap them, you might want to look at and see if they're the correct spark plug. Because most of the time when I've seen people try and re-gap it, if you can notice, this thing is going up a little bit. It's going up a little bit. That little bit of going up like that will cause a misfire. That electrode needs to be perfectly square to the tip. So generally what I'll do is I will take them out of the package and look very closely at them as I take them out of the box. They should have the little, especially these Denso ones, have those little protective rings around them. In fact, most of the spark plugs I get today do. Let's see if they're in here. Oh, I got them all in one place. They usually have these on them. Some sort of thing like this. Bosch, I believe, has a cardboard one. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll look at the spark plugs and I'll make sure that they look all the same gap. And whatever that gap is generally what I will leave them at. Because that is what they gapped them and made this thing here the shape for, so that they're exactly square. So if you have to re-gap them, you know, you might want to consider that they might not be the correct ones. Now you might say, that looks like a pretty good shape for one of these type of spark plugs, but this car did have a little bit of a misfire, and I think, and it runs beautiful now. So if you look at that shape of that thing going upward, it looks to me like somebody replaced these and gapped them larger than what they were supposed to be. That's what I'm thinking happened. And I opened them up, and the new ones, this part was perfectly square, flat. And I looked at them, they were all within, I don't know, very close of each other. I didn't put a gap in them. I usually don't have to do that because I've been doing this a little while. So I just looked at them to make sure they looked all the same and they didn't get damaged from the package or anything like that, and put them in the car, and it runs perfectly now. So if you're wondering, if you replaced your spark plugs, you're wondering why your engine isn't running correctly, you might want to consider not gapping them. I know that's going to be just a ton of haters that will tell me, oh no, you're wrong, whatever. Okay, I'm 57 years old. I was an ASE Master Auto Technician when I was 23. Okay, 23. Passed all 8 first time. Worked on as a mechanic for a few years after that. Actually retired from being a mechanic because I didn't want to bend over everybody's car, and I just didn't like doing it. And I still do all my own, and I don't have problems with my cars. So I don't know, listen to the hater if you want, but that's the way I do it. I'll talk to you on the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.